So I'll put that. Those in favour?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Carried.
That's... Mr Chair, I had my hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We spend 2.5 hours on stuff we don't need.
Sorry, yes,
And
or
wait
what
through
was
stuff
it?
we should be talking.
It was to bring the item up, these people.
Oh, to bring it up, sorry,
Precedence
procedure.
of business isn't the actual item.
Fine.
Just to explain to councillors, Gail is actually meant to be at a funeral in Hamilton in about an hour's time, and in order to enable her to get away, we
No
just
problem.
wanted
Sorry,
to
didn't
check.
realise
Yeah.
that was what we were voting for.
Okay, so we are in your hands, obviously.
Should have left. Why did we do the motion?
Ina mana, ina reo, ina waka, ina koto, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Good morning. As Chairperson has indicated, my name's Gail Ogilvie. I manage environmental services, and my colleague here on the left is Greg Holland, who manages natural environmental strategy, and Karen Cray, who is the project manager for Auckland Growing Greener, and is also in the policy team. I've got a very brief presentation that I'll just go through with you to summarise the key points of our Auckland Growing Greener initiative, and then just open it up for any questions you might have. So, based on Colmar Brunton survey results, about 90% of Aucklanders value either our regional parks or our harbours as one of the most important reasons they live in Auckland. So the beauty and health of our natural assets are one of the key components of our aspirations to be the world's most livable city. And as you may have seen in the media this morning, we've just released the 2015 State of Environment report, which shows that at best we're holding the line with many of the environmental metrics that we're monitoring. So over the next 30 years or longer, we've got significant growth plans. And we're at a point that we can build in the latest technologies and practices and ways of making decisions to allow us to deliver on both economic and environmental outcomes. Or if we continue to develop in the ways that have been used to grow urban centres in the past, then we're at a point where we risk further degrading our natural environment. So hence the initiative that we've putting forward to you today. So this direction around Auckland Growing Greener is also really well aligned with mana whenua aspirations as katiaki for our natural environment, and it's also consistent with the Auckland Plan, which includes a strong commitment to environmental action and green growth. So the Auckland Growing Greener initiative consists of two parts. The first part is more effectively telling our story. As an organisation, we're actually doing a significant amount of work already to protect and restore our natural environment, but it's a story that we haven't been particularly effective at telling. So since amalgamation, as an organisation, we've developed a story around what we're doing about housing, what we're doing about transport. We haven't really developed a story about what we're doing with our efforts to protect and restore our natural environment. So that's the first purpose, to more effectively tell our story. The second purpose is to indicate ways that we can accelerate our commitment to our investments in our natural assets and build Auckland in a way that doesn't compromise those assets. So, in summary, to grow greener. So, to more effectively tell a story about what we're currently doing, we've included a range of examples in 4 priority areas. So what are we doing around transforming our urban settings? For example, the Central Rail Link, our compact urban form that we're promoting through the Unitary Plan, electric trains, LED lighting. Secondly, and these are all just examples of work that is currently committed and funded in each of these key priority areas. So secondly, zero waste. You'd all be familiar with the Waste Management Minimisation Plan, the targets associated with that and the range of actions that we're taking to get Auckland to zero waste. Restoring nature, the document includes many examples, for example the significant ecological areas overlay that we've included in the unitary plan, some of the work that we're doing on ecological corridors, and also the recent 1080 drop in the Hanuas that's going to have significant positive results for the biodiversity in that regional park. And then in Healthy Waters, the document refers to some examples, in particular the use of water-sensitive urban design in our special housing areas, and also our plans to implement the National Policy Statement for Freshwater Management, which requires us to manage catchments within limits. And then the second purpose of the document is about, well, where to from here? How do we excel? How do we build on the work we've been doing, but to continue to accelerate our efforts to build essentially an environmental lens across the decisions that we make as an organisation and the projects and programs that we deliver? So that's essentially threefold. One is about continuing that work that I spoke about in those 4 priority areas. The second is about, we've established 5 operating principles that we're going to be, pending endorsement of this direction this morning. Those 5 operating principles we're going to be using as a strategic checklist of the initiatives that are currently being undertaken by Auckland Council. And those 5 principles are, firstly, walking the talk, so getting our own house in order before as a first priority, and that's a part of the Chief Sustainability Officer's role. Secondly, empowering communities, which is already a program that's well underway. Thirdly, working in partnership with mana whenua. Fourthly, innovative thinking. And the final operating principle is about delivering infrastructure with multiple outcomes, like projects like the Stormwater Oakley Creek work, where we're actually mitigating flooding, but at the same time enhancing the ecological health of that stream, and also creating economic development and cultural opportunities. So Auckland Growing Greener, success for Auckland Growing Greener means that delivering environmental and sustainability outcomes is everybody's business. This is not a separate list of, 27 actions that make up something about protecting environment. This is actually about building in environmental considerations into our decision making. The second element of success is the outcomes, which is really the end game, that the natural environments are healthy, resilient and supporting a prosperous economy. And thirdly, that Aucklanders have confidence that we've taken the Auckland Plan vision, we've taken the transformational shift, we've put some flesh on it, and we're moving in that direction. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you for the report and the document. I know that in the previous Auckland Legacy Councils, they all had different programs in relation to the environment and improvement and enhancement of the environment. And I think some councils really talked that up as kind of the cornerstone of their existence, and it was a high up in the list of priorities. So is that something that we're going to be trying to, emulate with this document here? Because if we don't walk the talk, well, we won't get the kind of response from, and it's the communities across Auckland that we're really looking for that response from. So that's the issue that I'm interested in, and interested in how we are going to kind of get that message out there.
Thank you, Councillor Wood. Look, absolutely, I think one of the reasons walking the talk is the first operating principle is exactly that we need to demonstrate that we're operating in a way that's environmentally responsible. And we've made some good ground on that quite recently. We now have a Chief Sustainability Officer that is responsible for a lot of our internal walking the talk initiatives. For example, the fit out of 135 Albert Street and the Green Star rating associated with that, and all of our internal operating systems to make sure that we're treading as lightly as possible. So in terms of I think we need direction from the top, which is exactly why we've brought this forward to you today, so that we can endorse that. Once that's endorsed, we can take that through and infiltrate it and work with it across the business. But I see it as a building up from the ground rather than, fanfare associated with a environmental label. These days, it's just part of good decision making to build environment into the decisions you make alongside financial, cultural, social well-being.
Thank you. Councillor Holtz, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm very happy to move this and really happy to see this piece of work coming through. I think we're not going to end up in nirvana immediately, and the State of the Environment report shows that. But exactly, this kind of weaves through the kind of sustainability, environmental approach that this council needs to take into everything that we do. And I want to just acknowledge the team for bringing together the disparate threads of this debate and discussion in the way that they have over the last little while, and thank them warmly.
Thank you. Councillor Fletcher.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I note that Councillor Holtz has moved the recommendations. I'm happy to second them. But I, in doing so, also want to congratulate those that have actually brought this together. But to remind councillors that what we're actually doing today is formulating a policy that we're going to hand over to our management to implement. And I think that this is a welcome step forward for me, because the umbrella, the lens, whatever you want to call it, is one that we must actually put over every single policy decision that we make from this point on. And to that effect, and I don't know whether the question should be directed to Gail or whether it should be directed to Dean, I think that we should give consideration so that it's to the forefront of our minds all of the time that whereas we have a local board impact statement, a Maori impact statement, I believe that we should have an Auckland Growing Green impact that should be before all of the reports that come forward, so that we get that consistency, that we get that sense of responsibility, that not just as councillors, but management, so it's entrenched into our organisation. So I'm wondering, Dean, if you could respond to that, please?
Sure. Look, I think that was something, in terms of how we construct our advice to you as elected members in your decision making, certainly the opportunity to make sure that we're very clear on impact on Auckland Growing Greener and the wider environmental principles. But I'd like to take that back. We've got a quality policy team. I'd like to take that back to them and say, how do we embed this as an approach, and then come back to you on how we've...
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy with that response, providing it does come back to us, because this is a policy-based decision and it's something that I would like to see embedded. I just welcome it because the move away from trying to come up with prescriptive lists of things that we're going to do, and none of us know what we don't know, and none of us know what the future will hold. I think that this is just a very much more useful tool. So I look forward to that report coming back at perhaps the next committee meeting of this, that we can give consideration to it. And again, my thanks, sincere thanks to the staff for the outstanding work in bringing this together.